Hi everyone, welcome back to the second part of this episode. Here we'll be discussing about management consulting. We have with us Divyansh Jain, who has previously worked with the Boston Consulting Group, one of the top tier management consulting firms. We discussed how to break into investment banking in the previous part of the video. So if you haven't watched it yet, the link will appear in the suggestion box above. So Divyansh, what does a management consultant actually do?
So a management consultant is basically someone who can help a client with any and any problem. So this is the thing how at BCG we used to say that we help our clients unlock value, and that's what any consultant does. And the thing is, the spectrum is so broad in terms of the kind of clients you work with, from industries to financial firms to the governments and the impact funds of the world. So that's the beauty of the job, that it's not one key problem that you're solving. There's a different problem that you're solving in a different day. The thing is, what is consistent is the approach and the skill sets that you use to solve a problem and the intent to solve a problem to its best. So that's what a consultant basically does. And it's a very broad generic answer, but it's the reality as well.
Right. So summarizing it in one line, management consulting is basically solving problems for your clients.
Definitely. And that's how they position it as well.
Yeah. So what did your
Uh,
average day look like? What kind of work can be expected?
Right. So I think the average day would be very different in different projects. So in a management consulting position, I think you would probably be a part of 2, 3 projects a year, and they can range from as short as a 2 week project to a 9 month project as well. And for different projects, there are different industries and the different problems you're solving. So every time you are given, you're aligned with some client that you're working with, and once you're working with that client, you align to different work streams and projects. That so at every with every client, there are these 4, 5 members in a team that you're working with. There's this one engagement manager or project leader who's helping all these different work streams. And then the piece that you're working on, you would align with your manager on your hypothesis on how you plan on solving this and what are the results you're expecting to go ahead with. Then you work on the analysis. You get the data from the client, and then you do some analysis and prepare some presentation about the solution that you've reached, and then you go present it, that this is the problem, this is how you think you can solve it, and this is how whatever your XYZ consulting firms believes that we can solve this problem. So your entire week revolves around this, and then you reach the next stage of the problem, and then you reach the next stage of the problem. So you make a Gantt chart of, let's say, a 8 week project. These are your plans for the next two weeks, and this is how you solve it. But it's that the way of solving a problem is very similar. And after 2 months, let's say you move on to another project, it will be very similar. But just that it'll be a different industry, a different team, different client, and that's the beauty of it, because you never get bored. And I think across any job in the world, management consulting is it's a career where you never get bored. It's very interesting.
So management consulting is very dynamic, right? And it's like a dream profile for many. So how can one enter into this profile?
I think management consulting, there are a lot of ways to enter into it. That's one place I've seen people come from the most varied set of backgrounds. Because as I can see, people come from tier one undergrad institutions like the IITs and the SRCC of the world. At the same time, I've seen MBAs come there at a very similar position. I have seen people who've done some undergrad and then gone abroad for a 1 year master's and then come back and as well join at the same positions. I have seen people from different industries who are bringing different work experiences, join as temporary consultants, and then convert into front-end positions as a full-time consultant. I have seen lately, it's very good to hear that for the last 4, 5 years, I've seen these consulting firms hire CAs every 6 months. And they are taking their CA programs very religiously, given that CAs have actually performed very well in these consulting firms. So with that, I think there is no one way you can get into it, but at the same time, a good education and good problem-solving skills are what they look at.
I think it's very proud moment for the entire CA fraternity today that all three top tier management consulting firms, right? The MBBs, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, all three hired chartered accountants as of today. Uh,
Definitely, and it was something that in maybe 4, 5 years back it was very resisted, and but at the same time, it's great that they we push the envelope and we are seeing the transition.
right. So Vivansh, let's say that there's a chartered accountant and he wants to get into management consulting, right? Or what are the relevant things that needs to be on his CV to get shortlisted for an interview over there?
Right. So the sad reality is obviously clearing CA in first attempt becomes a gating condition. At the same time, I have seen these consulting firms get hire P folks who have actually maybe not cleared the IPCC in the first attempt, but at the same time they've gotten a rank in their finals. So if you have an interesting CV in terms of that, in terms of how you project yourself, I think it's fine if you even if you don't have a 100% first attempt history, but they do have a bias for ranks, and as there are always exceptions where non-rank holders are there in these consulting firms as well. But again, that's the reason why we call them exception. So getting a rank is always it makes life easier, and you're also getting increased. Consulting is probably the only industry where I see that people value co-curriculars a lot, because way more I think because it's just that they bring a lot of color to the work group, and that's something they keep like the daily lives interesting, and sometimes it does get boring, so it's always entertaining if they're entertaining people around. So that's a thing that I've seen only in consulting, because it's not true in banking or in PE, but in consulting co-curriculars is something that you do look at when you're interviewing someone. It's if it's just an academic profile, then it's not as valued. So they do look at whether you have had leadership positions in your college, in your society, fests, whether you do some sport, you dance, you have done theater, anything that helps. And yeah, that's it. I
I
think
think there's one
beyond that,
more point that we need to address. It's the rule of spikes. It's a very common term that we hear in the management consulting world. That in your CV you should have a specific number of spikes. Let's say 3 spikes, and it can be spread out in your CV. It can be a spike in your academic qualifications. It can be a spike in your professional qualification. It can be a spike, as you rightly said, in your extra co-curricular activities, or it can be a spike in your overall CV, right? So what I have heard while speaking to people is that you need to have at least at a minimum of 3 spikes to get into these top tier management consulting firms.
yeah, but at the same time, spikes are something that you can't plan much later in life. The once you decide to, normally people don't know about consulting. Let's say before they're in the 20, before the 19 or 20 years old. Okay, no one so plans so much, and by the time you're 21, it's too late to plan these spikes. At the end of the day, after that, I think your CADS is all you can play with, and that's all you can work harder in your exams and do well. But suddenly, I can't be at the age of 20. I can't decide to become a national level tennis player. So that's the thing, and that's the kind of spike they look for when they're looking at co-curriculars. Or I can't become a very good singer no matter how badly I try to. So that's why I think that's why I always, whenever I'm giving these interviews, I really say that if there's someone very young watching and has some co-curricular that he or she is good at, I would always say that never push it to the back seat, and always make sure you wear it as a badge of honor. And at the same time, a CAD is something that you should always have a CV that shuts anyone's mouth when you're valuing your co-curriculars. You should have a mark sheet that probably shuts them out. So always have a very good mark sheet and then go excel with your co-curriculars, and that's how you should always be. You
I
should
mean, that's very
maintain a balance
correctly
between both.
said because even when someone asks me like how can I break into management consulting, the only advice that I have for them is that along with your college, you need definitely need to focus in your acads and also try to get into the best of internships that you can get, but don't really ignore the extracurriculars that happen in your college, right? There are so many events happening in your college. Try to participate in as many events as possible. Try to be good at them, and maybe try to also win some of these events, right? So that you can add on to your CV. And it's not only something that you need to do to add on to your CV, but it also develops your overall character, right?
Yeah, I think, see, where I would add a point over here is what one can do is probably I've seen in management consulting, relationship building becomes a very important aspect, because when you're going to working with your client, it's very important that you build on your relationships, keep the client happy. And over there, I think being an extrovert helps, and that is something that consultants. It's very important for consultants to have that, and that is something people can actually work on as well. Because to be honest, let's say I've seen a lot of people. I've seen, in fact, the first time I met you, I think 5 6 years back, you were a very shy person, and the version I see today, you are running your own YouTube channel, and I've known you closely for the past few years, and the transition I've seen is beautiful. And it was not like that forever, and I've seen you actually work hard on it. So that's the good thing, that if you identify that there's some gaps that you need to fill, and if you work hard on it, I think you can bring amazing results to it. And that's the thing, you have to be very self-aware, and that is what you look at. I mean, consultants look at when they're hiring. So I think if you have that, if you identify that these are things you can actually work on in terms of soft skills, communication skills, your relationship building ability. If you're a shy person, you need to break out of your shelf and start talking to people in a very healthy manner. So that these are things that you can actually work on, and that's what we can do when we are doing these sessions, at least, and address these aspects. Yeah.
Thanks, Divyansh. That means a lot. I mean, the beauty of these profiles is that it's so dynamic that literally just from the very start, you'll be thrown off the cliff and be expected to know things other than the domain that you have been working for since the past few years, right? For example, we are chartered accountants. We have been working in finance, taxation. But once we enter into this profile, like you rightly mentioned, that you had to learn about the IT sector in detail to be able to perform on that particular project. So that's the beauty of this role, that you enter into various different dynamic sectors and learn about them also.
Yeah, I think all the three work streams that you're talking about, so be it investment banking, consulting, or private equity, I think if CA is looking into any of these professions, he or she will have to forget the fact that they're coming from a CA background, because they can't constrain them with the fact that they don't have that relevant background and expertise, and they'll have to go out of their way to get comfortable with these nuances of these different industry dynamics. Yeah.
Right. Rather than the CA background being the main task, it just acts as an add-on, right? That you're able to analyze the financials in a better way, but then you're expected to perform at all levels. So, Divyansh, let's say that a person gets to the interview, right? He gets an interview call. So, what are the relevant preparation tips that you would give to him to ace that kind of an interview? And what can be expected to be asked to him in these sets of interviews? Since management consulting, usually cases are asked in these interviews rather than the conventional tell me about yourself, what was your previous work experience. Mostly they focus on case interviews. So how can one develop themselves to be able to perform better in these interviews?
I remember coming to you to help me prepare for these case interviews, and remembering how we used to prepare together for our BCG interview. So you can answer this question very well yourself, Jay. I think for consulting, I think like you rightly said, so the structures of interview is very different, and there's this case problem that you're given, and you need to break it down and ask the right question and come up with an answer. So the problem is a lot of people never have even heard of this interview pattern, and especially if you're from CA background, you might have never faced such a situation. So you need to get comfortable with such an interview. So I think everyone starts with these case books like Case in Point, Victor Cheng, videos on case interview problems, and then you learn for the first time what a hypothesis is and how you need to solve for it. So I think practicing as much as possible definitely helps. You need to practice with different people, and after these case books, I think you start practicing like as if it's a real interview, and you do these mock case interviews. These consulting firms thankfully give you a buddy with whom you can practice, and they actually help you the most. I had an amazing buddy who really helped me the most in terms of every interview. The feedback that I received actually helped me build on to and ultimately for the final day I was very confident, and I had already made my first set of mistakes. uh, One thing that happens obviously when you're interviewing, it's not a very easy experience. It's a bit stressful. So a lot of time you get a lot of feedback, so it's very important to take that feedback correctly. A lot of times people give up and lose hope, that maybe they think that they don't have it, but that's the wrong attitude, and you need to actually you get a, let's say, a 20-day period where you need to give in your best. Make sure you don't exhaust yourself out during these case interviews. There's always the right amount of cases that you need to practice. Some people can hold one practice like 10 cases a day, which is itself not the best attitude, because ultimately then you would have a lot of different mixed approaches towards a problem, and you might struggle to find the right way to solve the problem. And ultimately there's some sort of personalization that also one needs to bring in when you are solving a problem. So I think the best thing is whenever you're getting a case problem, you have to be in a very calm mind. You have to be very fresh. You need to take a step back. You need to break the problem into a structure, because ultimately the interviewer just cares about how well you're structuring the problem in terms of coming to a solution. It's true, they don't care about the answer. They don't care about the math. They just want to see clarity in thought. And if that is something that you can sell to an interviewer, that okay, listen, I understood your problem well. I asked the right set of questions, and my have a lot of clarity in the uh, structuring of the problem. And if you can just provide that, I think you will ace your interview.
Right. I mean, that's very rightly mentioned. I think one of the tricks to this trade is to practice as many cases as possible. I remember practicing my first question versus giving the final interview. Those were two very different dynamics that I went through, right? At the initial cases that I practiced, like I fumbled a lot. There were so many different points which I failed to mention in those particular cases. And during my final D day, the day when we were giving that interviews, the way I was able to present my cases was so much better than what I used to do from the first interview. So the trick to the trade is to practice as many case questions as possible, be it with your buddy or be it with your fellow friends. I remember practicing cases with Divyansh as well, and let me tell you, Divyansh is one of the best persons you can practice the cases with because he gives such amazing feedback. Plus, also when you are practicing a case with him, like you give him a case, you'll also get an insight on how to think in a structured manner. You know, he used to solve the most difficult of cases in such a small amount of time. I used to be so surprised looking at him, like he's solving it in such a small amount of time and in a very structured way. Viransh was just being modest. I mean, we did practice and we were
No,
able to solve some of the cases which other fellow friends were not even able to reach close to the answers to.
I think Jay, you're being too sweet over here because I remember doing a case with you also, and you were. I remember you acing the case, and I got a lot of points from you as well that I ultimately did use in my final interview. So I'll always be thankful to you.
Thanks, Vivian. So one more point to mention over here that when you're giving your interviews on the final D day, cracking these cases are you need to break down the problems into smaller key aspects, right? And only after you have broken these cases into smaller key aspects, then you'll be able to structure the problem in a much better way and solve these cases. That's one of the keys. And the second part is that you don't need to be so nervous during the interviews because even the interviewer will himself help you solve these cases. It's not like he'll ask you a question and he'll sit back. He will be with you throughout the process and he will try to give you some amount of hint so that you can be able to crack that case. So it's all about
Right.
structured interview and being very quick at thinking on your feet, right?
Definitely, I think that's why a visit to Starbucks before your interviews does help.
Right. So the branch again, let's also address the elephant in the room over here. So what is the industry pay like in these kind of in the MBBs of consulting?
At the MBBs, I think the pay is pretty common for a pre-MBA role if you're going from an undergrad or a CA background. I think you would get anything from between 13 to 19 inclusive of your bonus. And uh, at a post-MBA role, if you're going for an MBB position, you would earn anything around 28 to 35. That's the range, I think.
Right. Thank you so much, Divyansh, for sharing your valuable experiences with us. In the next episode, Divyansh will be sharing his experience and interview preparations to get into the glamorous private equity role and how he, as a CA, which is a very rare sight for a CA to convert into a private equity role. So stay tuned for the video. Also, comment down below for any queries. Either Divyansh or me will reply to them. So see you next time. Cheers.
Thanks.